We on YouTube yet?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Public Works Committee of the Common Council meeting of Tuesday, September 5th. 2023, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:02. As we begin, we have with us Jim Frayer, Lisa Shanahan, Brian Meek, and as others join, we have Ms. Najoski-Eichner just about to Zoom in, so she will be joining us in a moment. And myself, Barbara Smith. I will begin with public input. Is there anyone who is signed up, who is with us, who would like to speak? Please raise your hand. Okay, I see we have Diane Cece with us. Go ahead, Diane, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We can.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to stay on actually to hear more about this item. I wanted to speak to your agenda item number 2, I think it is tonight. The data sharing agreement between First District Water and WPCA. This is Diane Cece, by the way, Olmsted Place in Norwalk. And I'll just preface it by saying sometimes I really like that public comment is first on the agenda because you folks get to hear some questions or concerns or suggestions ahead of your own discussion. But then sometimes I like it afterwards because then I get the benefit of understanding what this item really is. And I can hear some of the questions that you folks have. But in any event, so the reason why I wanted to talk to you tonight is when I saw this item on the agenda, I was a little confused and concerned about the fact that you're putting together an agreement that allows the First District Water to share private information about their customers with a third party and perhaps a fourth party, with the water pollution control being basically an autonomous authority. And for the purposes of being able to, my assumption is to more equitably bill for sewer. And I get all of that. And I did write back. I just got the information from Attorney Callahan and I wrote back. And so he probably hadn't even had a chance to read my response yet. But so my concern is really a few things. One, I went through the statute that Attorney Callahan provided, Connecticut Statute 7-258 as the authorizing statute that you're citing here to make this agreement. And I've read it multiple times and I'm not a lawyer, but every time I've read through it, I still can't find any language in there that authorizes this. The closest thing I've come to is a segment in there that identifies the possibility of having the Water Pollution Control Authority have the information from First District Water in order for First District Water to do the billing for the sewer usage. I didn't see anything that went in the opposite direction in terms of sharing and or billing. So I have a question about the statute itself, and maybe at some point this evening, Attorney Callahan can read it. My other concern, though, is about also the privacy about the information itself, because you're, like I said, you're essentially turning it over to a third party that's an autonomous authority within the city. And then we don't know, the brief paragraph that you have there, Chairperson, doesn't really identify all the confidentiality segments of this. So I couldn't discern either if there's then another party that will have this information that's responsible for billing and or collections for the Water Pollution Control Authority. I suspect there is some other agency or group that they use. And then my other concern is that, and again, maybe Attorney Callahan can address this. It's my understanding still in the state of Connecticut that a utility bill that contains your name, address, and an account number is a valid form of legal identification in the state. And I have another concern that what you're doing is you're asking First District Water to share literally those 3 things: the homeowner's name, their address, and that account number with these third parties for the purpose of billing. And I just don't, so I'm missing the point in the statute. And that's what I really want to try to get, and someone can provide that to me offline. I'm sure this is going to council, I would hope. And then to dig in deeper on the confidentiality thing here, because it seemed a little thin to me. Then I am going to try to stay on to hear you discuss this, because the other thing I wanted to ask, I hope you folks ask it, is that if there's an intention to make things equitable by looking at water usage in being equated to sewer usage out, for lack of a better term, how do you account for water usage in that never actually gets into the sewer system water through the WPCA? In other words, it never leaves.
Sorry, you're at 4 minutes. You're at 4 minutes. Can I ask you to wrap up?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Smith. Yep. So my question is then, how do you account for the water that comes into a property that actually never leaves it at all, or that water that comes in, say, through an irrigation system or something, that for essentially stays within the property, except for, you know, if there's runoff? I'd like to understand all that long term. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? No? Okay. All right. Seeing none, I will close public participation. And I would also like to let the record show that Councilmember Najelski Eichner joined us at 7:04. Okay, next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting of Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. Would someone like to move that item for me, please? Ms. Shanahan moves the item. Are there any changes, corrections, deletions? Okay, seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the minutes pass with 4 in favor and 1 abstention. Moving on to item 2. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all agreements and other documents necessary to enter into a data sharing agreement with the First Taxing District, the FTD, whereby the FTD will provide the WPCA supply water consumption data of the individual customers of the FTD, including total metered gallons, service address, owner's name, account number, and account type. Will someone move the item, please?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Freyer moves that item. And so I am going, you know, that we have a lot of questions from Ms. Cece. My understanding of this item is that, you know, we charge the sewer fee based on water consumption, and we have been estimating it. And so we want to be more accurate in our billing. But I do understand that there is protection for the resident. So I'm going to turn it over to first to Vanessa Valadares, our Chief of Public Works, and we will need for Darren there you are, Darren Callahan, to chime in as well.
Good evening, everyone. That is correct, Mrs. Smith. So what we are requesting is, so First District Water can share with us all the data that they have about the water meter, so we can avoid to estimate some of the sewer fees that we charge. This would only apply actually for commercial business and not for residential ones, the estimation fee, because as you may be aware, we do charge a flat fee for all the residential properties, but the commercial ones are estimated. So if we have access to that data, we're going to be able to really charge the right amount to the commercial business. So that's what it is. But and considering that we want to make that and keep the confidentiality, that's why there is this agreement, that so we cannot really share that data to anybody else. So Mr. Callahan is here and he can deep into the legal aspects of it.
Oh yeah, hi. Thanks, Vanessa. Yeah, that's exactly correct. It's really the agreement, and perhaps my fault. It should probably be written out as that it's a confidentiality agreement. But that's effectively really all it is that we can share, the FTD can share the meter data. That's really all. We have all the other data other than account numbers, which we don't need, but name, address. We already bill through our tax collector's office for the same function, absent the underlying meter data that will allow us to do it on actual meter usage basis. So the history here is counsel for the First Taxing District reached out to me because historically we'll make a request for the actual consumption data, and we'll get a response back that it's subject to privacy laws. And so I was approached by their counsel, who's with Pullman & Comley, who thought that, and I agree with, that there's a statute that would allow for the sharing of data, provided that confidentiality was maintained. So that statute is 7-258A. We're both in agreement that the language would cover this situation. And the reason why there's two parties to the agreement is because the WPCA is essentially the statutory authority that whose jurisdiction this falls under, but it's staffed by city employees. So they were more comfortable with the city being bound in addition to the WPCA, which we were fine with. So this is really just a cooperation agreement that allows for the exchange of really one piece of information that we don't currently have, which is the meter data. And really the other function of it is to maintain confidentiality of that data. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Sorry. Mr. Meek.
I'm a little confused. You're grabbing all the data and then you're going to filter out what you think is commercial, or is this going to be applied by a commercial zoning characteristic?
We are aware which parcels are commercial and which ones are residential. So we're just going to look at the data that we needed.
Okay,
we do that for throughout the city. We already do that. So we already have this. The only difference is that we do an estimate on the commercial, and now we're going to be able to bill exactly what is meter. That is the only difference. We already have all the data.
Okay, but the language of what you have forward here tonight does not make this exclusive to commercial. It looks, unless I'm misreading this, it's all the data.
Yeah, they're going to provide us the data. They're not going to break down between commercial and residential, but most of the data we already have in our system because we build this sewer based on it. The only data point that we do not have is the water meter reading.
Okay, so back to Ms. Cece's question. How do you know if it's like water for a pool or like, let's say, a water truck or stuff that's not going into the sewer? How is that determined?
So after the bill is sent, and Ralph, correct me if I'm wrong, that is usually the time is now, right? So at this time of the year, we already send all our sewer bills. And then if there is someone that want to really question what we are charging for sewer, let's say that they have a pool, they're going to come and ask us to do that adjustment, and that's when we do the adjustment. So on a monthly basis, we also report that to the WPCA board on all the sewer fees that had to be adjusted based on the resident or the commercial that got back to us.
Okay, thanks. My last question is, why just first district? Why are we not considering second district here?
Well, the first district had reached out to us in an effort to cooperate with our billing efforts. So that's certainly a conversation we could have with the other districts. But at this point, the first district is willing to provide us with an avenue to obtain that information.
Okay, thanks.
If I can add, SNU has been providing us all the water consumption data since the beginning. when the city first started billing sewer use fees.
So they have provided this data all along. Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you. Mr. Maker, you all set?
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Nadjelski-Eichner?
Thank you, Ms. Smith. So just generally, I just want to see here, Darren, if I'm understanding your right. We are getting all the data, but are only planning on using the commercial data. Is that correct?
No, every data record we request, we have to pay a fee for. I think it's like $5.76 or whatever they set, whoever requests it. So it's a la carte. If we are looking for data for a particular address, and they provide it, we're required to maintain confidentiality. I suppose we could just make a blanket request for every water customer in the city of Norwalk, but it's probably unnecessary given what we're hearing from Vanessa and Ralph. So I would assume that wouldn't be done.
So I'm just wondering, in terms of wording before this comes in front of the council, in order to reduce confusion, I'm just wondering if you wanted to change individual customers to commercial customers.
But we're going to receive the data from everyone, Nora.
Well, Darren just told me you aren't going to receive the data from everyone. So which way is it going to be?
But the agreement would allow it. The agreement would, unless we want to self-restrict ourselves from receiving consumption data, which is simply a meter reading, that we would receive it from the ones we needed it for billing purposes. As it stands right now, First Saxon District is willing to simply enter into a confidentiality agreement where if we request meter data, they will provide it, provided we maintain the confidentiality of that information.
I don't want to limit to commercial just for one reason, because I don't want to come back to you guys. Let's say that there is a dispute, and then we can use the water meter reading in case we have a dispute on the sewer usage. I think that then we'll have to come back just to redo the item. So I think that we're just gonna use the water meter as needed. We know that the most important will be for the commercial usage that we're gonna not estimate, and we're gonna bill them accordingly. But in case we need to access the water meter reading for any residential property, we should be able to also use that data, right?
I mean, I have no problems with this. I am of the opinion, and I will comment here, this is to me an excellent example of why we should not have separate authorities doing all this incredibly crucial work like managing our waters and sewers, right? This should just be city functions. I am, as we talk about charter revision going forward in 2 years, I will be talking about the fact that I think it is ridiculous that we have multiple taxing districts doing all this stuff. We shouldn't need confidentiality agreements to do this because this should just be city business. But putting that aside, so I have no issue with this, but I do want to make sure that we are providing clarity to the public and to the council when we're talking about this, because I am hearing slightly different things from you, Vanessa, than I'm hearing from Darren. And I have no issue with this. This seems to me like a perfectly appropriate government function, and we want people to have their billing based on accurate information. So I have no concerns, but I do just think there's the memo could potentially be cleaned up or a little clarity provided so that we're clear about the situations and when it is not being used and what it does apply to. That's all I would ask for when it comes, in front of the whole council.
Yeah, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Freyer for questions in a minute, but I do think that we need to amend the language, and one to clarify, individual is residential and commercial. I think we should clarify that. And I also think that we need to include the language around the confidentiality, that this is a data sharing and confidentiality agreement. So I think we'll have to do that. Mr. Freyer.
Yes, I think, Vanessa, your comment is that we'd rather get all of the information, we'll get the information from everybody, both commercial and residential. But there's no plans right now to base residential on meter readings, is there? Or is that
No.
something that we're planning to do in the next?
No. As of now, we are not planning to change how we are billing our sewer fees at all.
Okay, so there would be no need to get the residential information.
But it is easier for them to transfer everything to us. That's the bottom line. You know, they're not gonna do the homework on how they're gonna, which data they're gonna send. So let's say on one street, they have 10 parcels. They're not gonna go one by one and figure it out. The first shoe is commercial, so we're just gonna send that to them. They're gonna just send us the data, and it's up to us to figure it out what we need and what we're gonna read from it. That's why we're gonna end up getting all the data.
So I guess what you're saying is that they can't provide the commercial data all by itself, that they are not capable of segregating commercial and residential data? Because
well,
I know
they may. I don't think that they want to, right? Why would they gonna do more work?
I think
we are the one.
Sorry.
For them is their customers, right? I don't think that we are the ones that differentiate, because we are the ones that have different rates that we apply to them.
Okay.
So what they're gonna say, okay, this is what our customers are using with water. We can share that data with you with the water meter reading, and you can use as needed, with the caveat that this is confidential. That's kind of what is all this about. So when we receive the data, probably 99% of the residential ones will not even gonna look at it. We're gonna drop that in our database, and we are able to filter just the commercial ones, because that's what we have already been doing. After we filter that, we apply different fees based on how we charge for sewer fees. Sure. And that's when we're gonna really use that water meter reading to, instead of estimate the sewer fee, we're gonna really charge the consumption, the exact consumption of water.
Okay. No, I understand what you're doing with it. I'm just kind of surprised that they just can't strip that data out and give it to you just for the commercial deal. So basically what you're telling me is that they don't have the capability of segregating that data themselves.
It's more challenging. The WPCA uses the tax assessor land use code definition to determine what's residential versus commercial. First District does not utilize that land use code. They have their own commercial versus residential based on their folks going out and observing the property. So what may be their residential could be our commercial, because it's a 108C, which is a multi-residential building. Also, the city has both residential and commercial properties on the same property or parcel. So that's where it gets a little complex, because if it's a mixed use, which contains at least some commercial, it's built on consumption, that property. Right. So that's where this gray area becomes a little bit more challenging for everybody.
Again, it sounds like you're taking all of the data because you have the capabilities of segregating it, whereas they do not have the ready, or it's not readily available to them to make that, or it's too time consuming and too complex for them to do it. Is that about it? Okay. Yep. I mean, it's neither. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but that's what the situation is, and that's why you get everything, and then you've got to parcel out. It just makes your job more difficult, and the security issues of safeguarding all of that information, as opposed to just taking the commercial piece, that makes it a little bit more complex.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to have additional security procedures in place that we can safeguard the data for the residential information that we're getting. Okay, I got it. So I assume that the IT people have addressed that concern.
Yeah, so the information that comes in, the way I understand it, and Ralph, correct me where I'm wrong, but it comes into staff of the WPCA. So it's a limited universe that is generally responsible for the intake of the information that's going to be ultimately used to bill. It would then potentially be viewed by IT if they need to go in and deal with an IT issue, and Ralph could speak to when that would arise, and it would be utilized by the assessor's office and the collector's office, who already are repositories of confidential tax information. So it's a very small group. It wouldn't end up in land use or public works proper, or another department. It's really on a need to know basis. That would be our right to on use of the data. So I wouldn't have access to it. I wouldn't have a need to know it.
Mr. Meek.
Thanks. I support the language that says we're grabbing everything, and I think you should also go further and look at residences that are doing 500 flushes a month versus 5,000 for the same size property. It should be looked at. It's not fair to people who are conserving to pay the same freight as illegal apartments using way more resources than we ever intended for them to use. Thanks.
Yeah, anecdotally, there was a situation in Trumbull where a homeowner had their pipe burst, and Trumbull was at the time, it's been years, billed on an actual meter basis. So when the homeowner got the sewer use bill, it was, I don't know, $15,000 or something, because no one was in the house. It was vacated, was in a state. It had a swimming pool of water in the basement for 5 months while no one happened to
firsthand. A leaky toilet's enough to triple a bill.
Right. So the actual meter readings is quite useful to have equitable issues here.
Ms. Nachelski-Eichner.
Thank you. And I just wanted to quickly clarify what I think I heard here, which is that all of the information except the exact meter consumption is already in the hands of folks on both sides of this agreement. So there's really truly no sort of actual, I just don't want this to get blown out of proportion in terms of, there's no identity theft who's going to be running away with your water consumption data in some sort of way that I think is going to be particularly risky here. So as I am understanding what you have both already said, the residences, the ownership, all that is information that's already held by both sides, correct?
For the most part, I think the account number, wouldn't be known either. But you're not talking about date of birth or social security numbers or things that traditionally think is, and the universe is larger than that, but that you traditionally think is confidential.
Correct. No, I mean, I tend to agree with Mr. Meek on this one as well. I think this is, again, much bigger conversation than today, but certainly this data sharing agreement seems to me like an interesting step towards a conversation about whether we should be metering residential as well. Anything that encourages conservation is probably good for us in the long run. So I appreciate it. And I do appreciate, some clarifications here, and we'll look forward to moving this forward.
Can I just ask, is there, we under any kind of time restraints here? And I want to ask the committee how, we feel about possibly tabling this to clean up the language and clarify everything, perhaps a memo from the first taxing district, about their capabilities, what they're looking for. So, could we table it until next month and clarify everything?
There's no rush that I'm aware of. Is there a business rush, Ralph?
Not right now until March, because February, March, in the new calendar year, that's when we ask the water companies for consumption data.
So we could just push this to October. I think I'm going to recommend we do that. I mean, because there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of questions about the confidentiality. We want to make sure the language is right, and I think we could probably use a little more clarity in the backup.
So, Mrs. Smith, can you just tell us exactly what will be most of the questions so we can clarify that?
Well, I think what I'd like to see is some documentation, a memo of some sort from the first taxing district with their ask of the city, of the WPCA. And then the language I would like to see changed so that it includes the confidentiality as well as clarifying residential versus commercial.
Yeah, I actually, if you want, I mean, I have the actual data agreement that they've signed off on. Mm-hmm. So I could just submit the full agreement if anyone's interested.
So if it's not a rush, I recommend we push it to October. If you feel that, you'd like to move this more quickly, we could, I mean, I'd frankly rather table it for a month if the committee feels comfortable with that. Okay.
I have no problem.
Okay. All right. So, then I would like to make a motion that we table item number 2 to the October meeting. And again, we're looking for, clarity in language and some additional backup. All in favor of tabling the item, please raise your hand. Okay. Opposed? Was that you favored the item tabling, Mr. Meek? Table. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that passes unanimously, and we'll bring it back in October with more clarity. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on to item 3, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement between the City of Norwalk and John Turner Consulting, Inc., resulting from project number 4308, request for qualifications, pavement design and construction services for pavement engineering and consulting services in connection with the pavement management program. The agreement is to establish a 3-year base period with 2 one-year options and an annual sum not to exceed $250,000 a year, account numbers noted. Do I have a motion, please? Ms. Shanahan moves the item. I will turn this over to Ms. Valadares to discuss. I understand that VHB, who has had this contract, has sold this portion of their business to John Turner. So that's why we're seeing a new name here. So Vanessa?
Yeah, that's correct. So this is the consultant service that we hire to really evaluate the conditions of our roads. And that's how we come up with our forecast for paving forecast. And on top of that, they also help us with the inspection at the plant and also on the inspection on the contractor that is doing the paving. We have a 5-year, I believe a 5-year contract with a 3-year with a 2 to 1 year option. And we have been using VHB for the last few years. We really have, they have been very good. That contract expires, so we are about due to put an RFQ out, and we got one response, that is John Turner Consulting. So I know that for most of you haven't heard that name yet, but it is exactly what Ms. Smith just said. VHB ended up selling that part of their business, and John Turner Consulting bought it, but we're going to be dealing exactly with the same staff and the same software that we have been using. I have also Mr. Drew Bundelmeyer here in case you guys has any further questions.
Any questions from the committee? Mr. Meek?
Yeah, $250,000 a year. So what are we getting? 1.5 full-time equivalents out of this? How many people, what are the hours behind this? I don't see a schedule of.
There is a lot of hours on this one, Mr. Meek, yep, because they evaluate. We pretty much divided the city, let's say, in 5 areas. And each of these areas get truly evaluated on a yearly basis. So they go to each road and then evaluate the condition of it and then put it into this formula. That's how we ended up coming with our PCI. So there is also the whole software part of it and how we calculate that. And on top of it, there is the inspection at the plant while we're paving. Mr. Bundelmeyer can go into more details.
Yeah, so we don't necessarily spend that amount each year. In fact, there's about $500,000 worth of money that we could have added into our wrapping up contract that we've had for 5 years. We've of the 5 years we spent roughly 750,000. So it's an amount not to exceed, and we do get a fee schedule each year. And so each year the cost may change a little bit based on what the services are that we're getting from them. So there's a price per ton for the testing at the plant. There's a price per ton for the testing in the field, and they break that down in the package that was submitted with the RFQ, which you could also look up if you go to the link provided through Bonfire at the purchasing office.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, Mr. Chelsky-Eichner.
No, just very briefly, I wanted to just thank Vanessa and Drew and in general, the improvement of adding the link to the RFQ. I do really appreciate because it is very helpful to see. And I know that was something I had asked for at some point, and I just wanted to thank you because it did for this one. I went and looked at it. I was like, oh, what is this doing? It is actually, I think, an example of the kind of thing you've talked to us about before. You're getting quite a range of services. It seems unlikely you could get an individual who could do all these things in a single professional. And so it is nice to have this option. But yeah, anyway, I just want to thank you. I think that has made the communications clear, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 4A and 4B. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with the Grasso Companies, LLC for purchase project 4310 PM 2023-5 pavement management program for a sum not to exceed $6,331,657.50 with the option to extend this agreement for 2 additional terms for 1 year, account numbers noted. And 4B, authorize the Chief of Operations and Public Works to execute orders on contract with the Grasso Companies, LLC for purchasing project 4310 PM 2023-5 pavement management program for a sum not to exceed $633,165.75. Account numbers noted. Will someone move that, please? Ms. Nachelski-Eichner. Okay, thank you. This is our pavement management program. We're familiar with Grasso. They were the lowest bidder. Any comments or any particular thoughts, Ms. Valadares?
I just want to really tell everybody that usually we put this bid out in January in the winter. You usually see this contract in the winter, but we did very well this year. We did our base contract really on the first semester. We paved a lot of roads already. But we didn't add to the amendment of the regional contract. So we put it out again, the bid, and this is going to cover us up to June of next year. The good thing about that I want to share is that, as I mentioned before, we have been doing this holistic approach to paving our roads, where we're doing like a 3-step thing with the utilities and drainage, then sidewalks, and lately the final paving. And the reason why the value of this contract is so high is because we have a lot of roads that will be ready within this year to pave. So I think that we're gaining in a lot of areas, and having such a solid package. Also, we ended up getting a lot of responses. I believe we have about 5 responses to this package, what was very good. And the difference between the first and the second bidder was about a little less than 5% difference. So I think that it shows that we have a very, very strong paving program that was interesting a lot of contractors as well. So I just want to enhance that for you.
Any questions?
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going to vote no on this. We're going to, The paving roads is fine. Did a great job on Bain and Aiken. They're still not line striped. I'd like to see DPW take that back over, since TMP clearly isn't interested in things like that don't generate photo ops. It's over a month and a half. You've got a very dangerous situation on Bain with people going up and down hills, around curves with no double yellow. You're going to have an accident sooner or later. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Najelski-Eichner.
Thank you. So I have a question, not so much about this particular bid, but, and I, Vanessa, you and I had exchanged calls and hadn't connected, so I think I'll just go ahead and ask it. So what is our expectation for the protective equipment that our contractors provide to their staff when they're doing things like milling roads or cutting up pavement? We have been making a move in the city to really increase our expectations for worker safety. This is something we've worked on in a number of different areas. And I had a constituent raise the issue that they were seeing contractors milling roads without wearing masks or any kind of protective equipment. So I wanted to ask if that was something that we had requirements that we imposed on our vendors, and if we don't, if that's something we should consider.
And again, I'm sorry, I think that I never sent you a reply to that email.
We tried to connect. Yes, there was a...
Usually on our bid, we usually require that they are responsible to maintain the safety and security of their own employees. OSHA is the agency that oversees their work. So if they are in violation of that, it will be, OSHA will go to them and they can then be penalized by OSHA standards. So although the city, we can ask, usually on our we have a kickoff meeting for every project, and one of our line items is safety, and we remind them that they have to use their safety equipment, is what we tell them that is required, but we do not enforce. Who would enforce would be OSHA. So we can always, if someone thinks that now, if it is unsafe, we always stop them. We have an inspector. If it is unsafe, we do not allow them to work. But sometimes if it is, we really do not, most of them, usually they will have at least the vests when they work on the streets. They have to wear boots or closed shoes. And sometimes they wear the hard hat. So that is kind of the minimum that is required. And depending on the type of work that is doing, few other things are required. But that OSHA is the one that determines what will be required for each type of job.
Okay. So I guess then as a follow-up question to that, if we observe people who are city contractors operating in a way that we have concerns about, whose attention should it be brought to? Should we be brought to DPW's attention?
Yes, you can bring to the department that is overseeing that project.
Okay, great. And, obviously we have requirements that we seek the lowest bid. That's, longstanding government practice. But what is our flexibility? I think it's an issue that may come up in a variety of different contexts over the coming year. What is our flexibility to look not just at the lowest bid, but also the sort of track record for safety, for compliance with zoning regulations, for compliance with other city and state statutory or regulatory requirements when we're considering whether to choose a bidder or, a different bidder who might be a very small percentage larger, but we have, for whatever reason, more confidence in their track record with compliance with our expectations.
If we outline that in the bidder process, we would be allowed to choose one that is not the lowest bidder. So usually, particularly sometimes on RFPs and RFQs, and sometimes depending on the grant, we have to add some language where we can disqualify the low bidder. But even before the committee comes here to present to you, even though it is the low bidder, we did our homework to make sure that that company will be able to really take on to that contract. So particularly on this one, right after opening the bid, we had 2 meetings with the contractor to make sure that they would be able to handle this amount of streets in this amount of time. So they have to provide us a certain schedule. They have to tell us how much crew will be available, what is the equipment that is available before we come here. If they wouldn't be able to provide that, probably we would ask the purchasing agent to disqualify them, and then we'll propose to award the contract to the second lowest bidder.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense. And I am not in any way concerned about the sort of I trust you all very much to assess the capacity of the contractors. I think I'm asking a slightly different question, which is we as a city have a number of challenges around compliance with our regulations on any number of fronts, but zoning being one that stands out. And I am concerned that we are making sure that city monies are only being spent with vendors who are fully in compliance with all state and local law. And that includes worker safety issues, that also includes zoning. So that's the question I'm asking, which is how are we monitoring for our vendors' compliance with very crucial issues of safety for our residents?
So there's a language already, is the template that we use on our front end package, and who provides that is our purchasing agent. So if you have any more specific questions on how she covers, because it's their job, after we open the bid, the purchasing department has to go through and make sure that that contractor is entitled to do that work and is meeting the requirements of the city, whatever that will be the requirements. After that, she gives us the okay for that. It comes to the department that is putting the bid out, and then we evaluate on the technical basis of it.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add that that the terminology that we always use for all of our bids is the lowest responsible bidder. So if we have knowledge of some reason to disqualify a contractor due to some irresponsible behavior, whether it be through the purchasing department or DPW, that is a reason to potentially disqualify the low bidder if they're not a responsible.
Interesting. And is there some, and we can certainly ask the purchasing agent, and I can follow up with the purchasing agency agent on this, but it does actually raise an interesting question too about how we're logging complaints and concerns. If someone is calling DPW to express concern about, seeing contractors in a way that they think is perhaps not compliant with safety, does that information then subsequently get referred to the purchasing agent so that there is some kind of record or history, or how does that process work?
Well, we're in communication with the purchasing agent on a daily basis. I joke that that's my second office at City Hall. I go visit those girls every day. I don't know if they like that, to be honest. But anyhow, but what happened is that we do share our concerns. So sometimes even before we're going to open a bid, depending on the time of the year that we know who is very busy, we already kind of brainstormed and said we're concerned that, this and this bidder may be the lowest bidder. What will be, what we can put on to make sure that we're going to end up with the right contractor to do this type of job. So if we feel that the person is doing a work that is not safe enough, we'll be able to disqualify. But that communication will happen from the department heads to the purchasing agent.
Okay, great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's a helpful conversation.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Go ahead.
I just had one quick comment. First of all, going back to the idea of the lining of the roads, from what I understand, that there's only one vendor that lines the roads in the state. So we're really kind of over a barrel. And the other thing is that if it's done at night, and it's also very weather impacted. So if we had some bad weather earlier in the summer. So is that all goes to delaying that lining of the road, I suspect. Is there anything else that is it our legislative group, could they bring any influence on the state to maybe accept or look into getting an additional in excess of one vendor for the entire state, which seems kind of insane.
I know it is only one, Mr. Freyer. We always ask that is safety markings, that is the only one that does epoxy paving markings, and the state probably fight with us because also they need to also stripe the highways and the parkway before we do. So I bet that they would love to find somebody else. Unfortunately, there is no other contractors here in Connecticut, at least not in Fairfield County, that is interested in bidding this.
That just
sorry.
incredible.
Someone needs to get a little more vocal. Bethel gets done within a week. Norwalk has to wait for months. Why? 6th largest city in the state. Let's act like it.
I was just answering to Mr. Freyer answer about other contractors, why that they are not here. And Mr. Mick, as you know, DPW do not oversee the safety marking contract. We just, after the roads are paved, TMP, we tell them, and the contractor calls, and then it is TMP is the one that really managed that contract.
Oh, I get it. You've explained this before. I'm telling you, I go back to the 90s when DPW owned this. It never went this long, and we've had weather before. So 1 year shouldn't make a difference.
Was Aiken Street completed? The striping? I did see them out there last week. I driving one way, but then I came home a different way, and I haven't been on that street yet. Do you know if Aiken's been striped?
I believe it did.
I thought so. Okay. Well, that's something.
Well, before the school, I think that we prioritized Aiken and West Rocks. We were able to get those.
Yeah. And I saw West Rocks was completed. So hopefully Bain is coming.
Just one other follow-up on that is that are all of the cities in the state have to comply with the same materials, or is there another vendor that will do it but not in epoxy?
Well, we want epoxy because it lasts longer. The latex is going to be take out after 2 winters, pretty much. That's why we want the epoxy paint.
So it is possible that we could see other towns being done faster than what we do because we want to do it better.
Sometimes just use latex. It is cheaper, but doesn't last as long.
Okay, good. Good question. Okay, thank you.
Nora?
Just to be, just for clarity, since I was looking at your low bid analysis, so the bid that we're looking at right now for Grosso and for the other bidders does include epoxy, but that is a subcontract that they're doing. Drew's nodding at me like, yes, it is. So, okay. So this is just basically they're passing through the subcontract bid.
Well, because then, let me just clarify what happened is that when we won the roads, we also have to, we put back the roads as it was, right? So we need to have the safety markings as part of the cost to pave a road because it's safety. What happened is that they use safety markings, so we just ended up funding that through the paving contract, but it's not Grass or whoever will be the paving contractor that will do that. We'll go to safety marking, but we have the money allocated to that. That's how it works.
Anything else? Okay, I will call for a vote now on items 4A and B. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, Mr. Meek is opposed. It passes 4-1. Moving on to item 5, technical correction of the Common Council action of August 8, 2023. Item 7B9, to authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a First Amendment to the Wood Men's and Boys Clothing Contract dated July 23rd, 2021 for project number 4087 for sum not to exceed $25,000 for fiscal year 2023-24 with an option to extend for 2 additional terms for 1 year each. Count number noted. Will someone move that item, please? Ms. Shanahan moves it. This is just a technical correction, adding the First Amendment language because we had an existing contract with Wood Men's and Clothing. So you'll recall that this went through the Common Council last month and we passed it. So it's just a technical correction. Any questions on that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. All right, Moving on now to information and discussion. Tree operations and programming. I think we probably don't have much to report, right? Because
Mr. Thor will be, yeah, we don't do the tree planting now, but Mr. Thor can give a little bit of what we have been cleaning up.
Okay.
Hey guys, thank you for your time. In the parks property, we removed 0 trees. In the school property, we removed 5 ash trees. Someday there will be no more ash trees, so we'll enjoy them while they're here. In the city right of way, we removed 11 trees, not 7. It was a typo. So the species are there. Parks property, we trimmed 48 trees. In the school property, we pruned 6 trees. In the city right of way, we pruned 64 trees. And just to put it in perspective, we do not prune for aesthetics, we prune for safety. If there's a leaner or something like that. So that's what we prune for. And the corresponding service requests and work order numbers are on the agenda. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have, of course. Yes, I see a question.
You have a question. So the spotted lanternfly has obviously come with a vengeance. I feel like everyone I know has been seeing them and squashing them. Any updates, any public awareness you want us to share? Anything we should all know about this?
I can answer that, Chris. So what we're gonna do is you guys gonna see we're working on a flyer to educate all the public soon. It should be out in I think that we're revising between today and tomorrow, and the mayor's office is going to send it out. Pretty much we are not applying, of course, no pesticides on it. We're gonna also, there is like a home formula that some people can put on the trees that will kind of send them away a little bit. But what we were told and informed is that there will be predators that will end up eating them. So the cycle, it will kind of, it will go away in a couple of years. So there is no harm, nothing related to it, but we are working on, we're gonna put signage in some of our public parks. And also there will be some social media communication and flyer. We're just finalizing also because we are including health, so we can have the right message that will go out. You should be seeing that in no later than the end of this week.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, I have not seen any on my property. My husband has seen 1 or 2. With all the trees and greenery, I'm surprised I haven't, but I had read that a mixture of vinegar and water is a good thing to use on them. So I have my trusty spray bottle out on the deck ready. Ms. Shanahan, you have something to add?
Yeah, I was going to say that I've been understanding that in Pennsylvania, where this outbreak first started, that there's been signs of predators eating them, like praying mantises are starting to eat them and some other predators. So that's good news. And let's just hope that that continues. Also, it seems like the infestation is bad for 1 year and then it layers off. So I think we'll hope that that's true.
We also had a very mild winter, so maybe this winter will change some of that too.
And are people still making recommendations that Tree of Heaven trees be removed, or is that no longer sort of a priority?
It's not any longer being sorry, I'm at a loss for words.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, thanks, Chris. Okay, monthly solid waste report for July 2023. Do we have August? We have Thomas Szabo with us. Thomas, you want to give us an update, please?
Hello, everyone. So for the monthly solid waste report, everything at the transfer station and the curbside collection is going pretty steady. We've seen some slight increases, less than 10 tons for both recycling and trash. So everything's remaining calm. for our book recycling bin that we recently got the transfer station that has once again filled up. That seems to be very popular and kind of definitely helps us get a lot of weight out of the recycling stream, and it gets picked up at no cost, which is nice. And for our compost, right now the transfer station is ahead for the month of July by 600 pounds. So that brings it up to 5,700 pounds for the transfer station. We're waiting community centers at 5,100 pounds, and Cranberry Park is at 2,550 pounds.
Tom, do you want to also
We'll get there.
The iRecycle pop-up event?
Okay, yeah, and the iRecycle pop-up event, it's a mobile redemption center for bottle deposits, any cans, bottles. I think there's some glass bottles that have a 5-cent deposit as well. They can all be redeemed at this event that's going to be Saturday the 16th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the 98 South Main Street. And this event, we made sure we didn't schedule it on the same weekends as any of the high school bands. So
thank you.
It's free and clear of those.
Yeah, I really do appreciate that you considered that. And also the location at 98 South Main Street is excellent because it doesn't, you know, it's a different location from the high school. So that's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any questions for Thomas? Okay, let's move on then to current and upcoming projects.
So Ms. Smith, I'll ask Mr. Mian that he is in the call also to go through the update of the construction projects.
Yes, hi. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my camera, so that's all right. If everyone can hear me. So ongoing projects right now, the Dreamy Hollow is ongoing, as you know. It's progressing pretty nicely. It's just one of those very large, slow-moving projects, which we're accommodating pretty well. No issues with that. For the pavement contracts, the PM 2021-1 and the PM 2023-1. Most of them are to completion already. There's just basically punch list items at this point. The 2023-1 is that's the one for various streets, West Avenue, Island Drive. Again, punch list items right now, mostly driveway modifications. The 2021-1 is mostly for Aiken Street and Richards Avenue, which is, again, major work is done. It's just some punch list items off the side, asphalt sidewalks and whatnot. And those are should be complete relatively soon. And the permanent railway repairs and surface restoration, that's basically ongoing at the moment. I don't think there's any update from there and recently, but that gets sporadic. The curbs and sidewalks at various locations also there. That is 2022-1, and that is also it's well underway, but there's still a few roads, minor roads left for that one. That has been a few snags for a few areas, but they're working those out. But that's still progressing pretty nicely with that. Sangamon, Morton, and Spring Hill roads are ongoing at the moment for both of those. The on-call drainage is, again, as such, it's just periodically happening on various small locations, but we're going to be dealing with some larger ones pretty soon. And the Freeze Park railing is, they were in construction last week, and I actually have to confess, they should be well under the way by now, but so one thing I had, I need to get confirmation on one thing before for that, but that should be also well underway at this point.
I believe that, Jim, I think that the only area that we're going to still miss the railing is just on the area that we're doing the abutment.
Yeah, but that's part of the major repair,
so,
yes.
yeah, but we had a contractor that remove the part of the railing there so we can do the abutment repair. And after the abutment repair is done, then we're gonna go back and finish up the railing.
Yes, that's
railing
why.
just on that location. Everything else is pretty much wrap up now.
Yes, that's the major portion of that then.
You have an estimate on how long that'll be before you're able to get to the railing?
The major one for that one, the abutment itself, because you are repairing the wall itself, gets structural for there. I had to confirm that with Paul Sodnick. I did not get that from him, but I will confirm that with him tomorrow.
Okay.
And then for the DOT projects, nothing major other than the as you know, the I-95 work, which is set to go soon. No major news with that, but most of the other ones have been allocated properly, and there's been no major issues with this. 467 West Avenue, that is the Pinnacle upgrade. That is also progressing. They've just completed a series of test bits, and the contractor is getting out there, I believe, sometime this week to be, actually, they're probably out there already now, to begin continue on one particular side that they finished before. So there was an issue before with the gas mains that they had to work around, but they managed to get that out of the way. So that is still ongoing, and we're just trying to keep updated with the schedule as it goes along with that. And Chatham Drive and Cosset, we are in just. The contractor has started the early stages of this one right now. They've not started construction yet, but that one is ongoing with as well, because we were coordinating with issues with SNU for that in terms of water protection for their particular utilities that are out there. And for the emergency Wall Street retaining wall, as Vanessa just said before, we're working on that as it deals with the Freeze Park, and that's ongoing with that. And Bonnybrook Road and Cannon Street, again, for Bonnybrook Road, for both of them, really, we're really waiting. Most of the major work has been done. We are waiting for the timber rail that's going to be set in that area, because there's a long lead time for that. So we're looking at probably at least the end of the month before we can get that rail in, because for whatever reason, Merritt Timber Rail is just a very large lead time for that. For that material at the moment, trying to establish that. Once they get in, it's all set to go, but the major work for those things are basically done, and then any punch list and paving items will happen after that. So that's for the active contracts. For the pending ones, the paving, which is the government granted one, that's the Brussels CHRO paving contract, and that is excuse me, that is ongoing at the moment. It's just been authorized. So 1 second, it was executed, and the pre-con is going to be later this week. So that's going to be about 4 or 5 different roads, and it's going to be covered. They're pretty small ones, so they should be covered fairly quickly with that. And that, again, that being a state granted one, works well for us on that. Then let's see, for the the pavement management. Well, we know about that, the pavement management one for as discussed.
I don't know if we need to give update on the design. We just listed, so then you guys know that what we are working on. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions on those. I just want to add on Cannon Street, the bridge that we're gonna. I just want to emphasize that I know that some people are concerned about the look of how it is at the bridge. We still going to work on beautify that 4 feet retaining wall that was built there. That wall, the reason why is there is that we need, as soon as we touch that culvert and there is a drop, we need to make sure that it meets all the crash standards. And that's why we have to build that type of wall on Cannon Street. We are now considering the options to beautify that wall, and also we're going to extend the sidewalk in one side of the bridge, so there will be pedestrian circulation there. So they're still pending on
Thank
that
you for
project.
addressing that, Vanessa. I do appreciate it. I've certainly heard quite a few complaints, and I know the District A members, council members have heard quite a few complaints about the way that's looking, and you know, with the fact that we won't see the railing until the end of the month, it's just kind of sitting there. It's a very pretty little park, so I do appreciate any kind of beautification efforts, and also safety for the pedestrians, because you know, you wouldn't think that it's a heavily traveled path for pedestrians, but a lot of people do walk to that park, around that park, walking their dogs, and so it is a safety concern. So I appreciate you addressing the sidewalk as well. So
just so you know, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, just so you know, another sidewalk has been actually removed, so we are extending. There was not a sidewalk there before. We are looking to actually extend that into there. Yeah. Now, and just to add to that, the height of the wall is once we get the sidewalk in there, the height of the wall is 4 feet above the existing pedestal right there now. So you have a sidewalk there, people will be able to walk by that, be able to look over. If they don't have that option there, they could just look at the brook. Some people like to do that when they pass by. Once the sidewalk gets extended into that area.
Okay. Ms. Shanahan, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear a little bit about the design project on the West Cedar Street project that's in our district.
Yeah, so West Cedar it is one of those federal bridge projects, Ms. Shanahan. And what happened was that we went backwards on the design on that because we couldn't get our DEEP permit the first time the way that we were proposing to construct it. But now I think that we're about to get it permitted. So we are hoping from our last conversation with DOT that we're going to be able to probably bid this project next year. But to be honest, I'm very mindful about the impact of the closure of that bridge with the MCC. So depending on when we're going to get the permit, I may hold into 1 more year because I don't want to affect for a long time the access to the Norwalk Community College.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tricky intersection right there. The bridge itself is so narrow, so that's already a problem, but yeah,
so it will look nice. You know, we're gonna, and the design itself is very nice because we were able to keep the same elements. It's like an arch type. We're still gonna have all those rock look, like a stone veneer on it, and will be wider. We have the sidewalk. I believe we also are carrying like I believe I can't remember now if it was the share or the bike lane that we put in. So I don't want to. I'm not sure what we have there. So I don't remember exactly what it was, the final width of the bridge. But the only thing so we have a full design ready. We are just waiting to get the permit and all that. And after that, we'll be able to bid. So if it happens by this semester and we can hit the streets in the winter, we're going to be built next year. We have the good thing about the delay is that there was a change on the federal program, and before we used to pay for 20% of the bridge and the state pay for 80%. Now is 100% funded. So at least we made 20%. We're saving 20% on this bridge, but I don't have a date yet. As soon as we have, we'll definitely communicate.
Yeah, and if maybe what we could do is go to the West Norwalk Neighborhood Association and share the plans with them and the timing, that would be really helpful because that neighborhood's pretty active and it would be nice to give them.
I believe we did that already.
No, we did that a couple
years ago. Yeah,
it'd be nice if we did it one more time. There's been a lot of influx in that neighborhood and a lot.
Okay, I'm happy to do this fall if you like.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Definitely, yeah, we can just find a date that works for them during the fall, and I'm happy to have the consultant and go over one more time.
That'd be great. So
just let me know when.
Good, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Any final questions? All right, very good. I will call for a motion to adjourn. Oh, that was a tie. Thank you, Ms. Shanahan. All in favor? Please raise your hand.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.